what's up you guys? It's Emily. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, welcome to my channel. So today I am going to have another unsolved mystery. This mystery is very shocking. It happened in a really rural area, and unfortunately the case hasn't been solved despite it happening almost 30 years ago. So today we are going to be talking about the Keddie cabin murders, or the murder in cabin 28. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Like I say a lot of times, I think it's really good to get these people's names out there, as well as really push for the case to be solved. They are still having new evidence come forward as early as a couple years ago, I believe, so the case very much is still in the works. So with that being said, let's get into the story of the Keddie cabin murders. Okay, so let's get started. So this story is actually based around the Sharp family, more specifically Sue Sharp. Sue Sharp was described as a very quiet woman, but very loving towards her children. She did have 5 children. The oldest was John, who was 15 years old. Then there was Sheila, who was 14, Tina, who was 12, Rick, who was 10, and Greg, who was 5. I know that's so many names to remember. When I was researching this, I was like, but stick with me here. Sue was married to a man named Jim. Unfortunately, it said that the marriage was very abusive, and she actually packed up and left with her 5 children. So it said in April 1979, her first stop was from Connecticut to Missouri, where her mother-in-law was residing, and she stayed there for a couple weeks, and then she moved to Quincy. So when she left her husband, she was living in relative poverty. They actually rented a trailer that her brother Don had previously lived in and then left. So keep in mind, this is a mother and her 5 children squeezing into a little trailer, but they made do with what they had. And then eventually they were able to actually move from this trailer to a 3-bedroom cabin. So just imagine that complete 180 of a difference. And so 3 bedrooms, it was in the Keddie resort area, cabin 28. And the Keddie area is very beautiful. It's a very foresty area, so they were getting along quite well. So it was April 11th 1981, and Sue Sharp was at home in the cabin with her children Rick, Greg, and also John, as well as Tina. So her daughter Sheila had actually gone across the street to another cabin, the Seabolts home. Their family's name was the Seabolts, and they had a daughter her age, and she was sleeping over there. So to begin with, it said that Greg, Rick, and Tina were in the home. Greg and Rick were having a friend over named Justin Smart. So Justin Smart actually lived in that Keddie resort area, a couple cabins down from them. So he was spending the night there, and then her son John and his friend Dana, who was 17 years old, were out, and they would come home later on that night. So at approximately 10 p.m. it said that Rick and Greg ended watching this movie or TV show called The Love Boat. I've personally never heard of it. And they talked for a couple minutes, Justin, Rick, and Greg, and then they all fell asleep. So the next day, Sheila comes home, because remember, Sheila was at a friend's house. So Sheila comes home, and what she discovers is absolutely horrifying. She sees her mother, she sees John, and she sees Dana on the floor. And she freaks out, understandably. She can't find Tina at this point, and she runs back to the Seabolt residence, where they call the police. And Mr. Seabolt actually went with Sheila back to the house and got Rick, Greg, and Justin Smart out of the bedroom. So these 3 boys had not been touched. They were absolutely unharmed and had slept through the whole event. So the crime scene was absolutely appalling. There was blood spatter all over the wall. There was blood spatter all over the ceiling. There was a bent steak knife, a butcher knife, and a hammer left in a small wooden plate near the entryway. And these are the weapons believed to have committed these crimes. So Sue Sharp was discovered laying on her side near the couch, and it said that she was nude from the waist down. She was bound with electrical tape, and John and Dana were bound with electrical tape as well. Sue Sharp had also had her throat slashed and had multiple stab wounds, as well as blunt force trauma to her head. As far as John's throat was slashed as well, and he had blunt force trauma, and Dana appeared to have been manually strangled as well as had blunt force trauma. And the reason that that steak knife was actually bent was due to how hard the murderer was stabbing them. So what's actually really interesting is that throughout the whole crime, the whole attack, Rick and Greg never woke up. And remember, this crime had to have been so vicious because there were multiple people involved, and also the knife was bent due to how hard the murderer was stabbing them. So it's incredible that they did sleep through this. However, Justin Smart came out with a statement. His statement's confusing because it changes on and off. So I'll explain that. So Justin originally said that he was having a dream. So in Justin's dream, he says that he comes to the door and sees Sue Sharp with two men. So the two men were described being long-haired with a mustache, and then the other one was short-haired and clean-shaven. The one man was approximately 6 foot while the other was approximately 5'7". They both had glasses, and one had a blonde hair while the other one had a dark greasy hair. So Justin says that he sees these two men with Sue, and it appears that they're getting into an argument when John walks in. And in an effort to defend his mom, John and these men start fighting. It appeared that at one point, Tina, so Sue Sharp's 12-year-old daughter, walked out with her blanket and asked what was going on. And at that time, she was removed from the home and never came back in. Also, it said that shortly after this, John was actually hit in the head with a hammer, which is when Justin Smart retreated to his room, or Greg and Rick's room, and hid behind the door. So after this dream, Justin would later change his story a couple times and said that it did happen, and then he recanted it. So it's really hard to say what the truth is. I know that he went through a lie detector test, and that's kind of why he confessed to it not being a dream, or maybe that it really did happen. I'm not too sure, but his story does tend to change throughout the timeline. So let's talk about some weird evidence that was found. And really, the police did not, I hate to pass judgment, but the police did not do a good job on this, and we'll get into that. There were so many clues that weren't followed up on and things like that. So the first thing is there was an unidentified fingerprint found outside on the railing of the cabin, which was never identified or linked to anybody to my knowledge. Also, Marilyn Smart, Justin Smart's mother, said that she had found a bloody jacket in her basement, which she believed belonged to Tina. And that's really important, and we'll get into why that is in a second. Also, Marty Smart, which is Justin's father, said that he was missing a hammer, and keep in mind there was a hammer found at the crime scene, and there would also be one found way later on by somebody with a metal detector going around a pond. So it's hard to say if maybe one of those hammers was used in the murder, just due to the fact that the Smarts' cabin was so close in proximity to the Sharps' cabin. Also, when police were investigating the Seabolts, they said that they had seen a green van pull up to the house at around the time of the murder that night, and they didn't really specify anything else, but some of the other people in cabins nearby that the police interviewed said that the van was actually brown and may have had a flat tire. Also, Justin Smart had told the police that Tina was missing, so keep in mind he was saying that Tina got taken out of the home in his dream, and for the first 12 hours the police really didn't believe him and did not search for Tina. And the first 12 hours is a really important time when you should be finding a missing person. So helicopters and search dogs were searching all over the area for Tina, and nothing would come from this for about 3 years. So after 3 years, there was an anonymous tip called in which somebody said that they knew where Tina's skull was. So it led police 50 miles to a whole nother county, and that is where they found a child's skull. So along with the child's skull, they also found a child's blanket, a blue nylon jacket, some Levi's with a missing back pocket, and also an empty medical tape dispenser. So what's really interesting about this is they think that the person who called in the tip either knew the killer or was the killer due to the fact that it was Tina's skull. So they would have had no way of knowing it was Tina's skull unless they knew exactly where it was, because at this point there's just no, to the lay person, there is no identifying features that would specify that it was Tina. Okay, so there are two main suspects known to the public. That is Marty Smart, which was actually Justin Smart's dad, the boy who was sleeping over the Sharps residence, and Bobo Betty. So let's get into a little bit about why we think that they are the main suspect. Well, first of all, it's very coincidental that everybody in that cabin that night was murdered except for Justin Smart, Rick, and Greg, and they were all together. And it's kind of speculated that maybe Marty didn't want to scare his son or put his son in a dangerous position, so he just left the three boys alone. Also, as soon as the crimes were committed, Marty Smart bounced out of town and went to Reno, Nevada. A therapist would later come forward and tell police that Marty Smart actually admitted to these murders and that, you know, she did report it to police, but nothing was ever done. As a therapist myself, I do know that, you know, you do have the right to break confidentiality when it comes to something as severe as a murder. So the fact that the therapist reported it and nothing was done is very bizarre to me. And as far as why Bobo Betty is an accomplice in this murder, I mean, not a lot is said about it except for the fact that he is an ex-con and he was Marty's roommate at the time. So not only do I think that the police did a horrible job with the investigation, but Dana Wingate, so remember John's friend who slept over, who was one of the 4 victims, his dad says that the police did an absolute horrible job and were just tripping over each other the whole entire time. And I mean, that's sad. I mean, it just appears that the proper justice was not done for these people, the proper time, the proper look through. I mean, all these clues and nothing came out of it is just bizarre to me. So if you're thinking that there is so much evidence and it's bizarre that nothing came out of it, you are not only alone there as well. A lot of people think that this whole crime was a cover-up. So there was a sheriff at the time of the murder. His name is Doug Thomas. And the reason I'm bringing Doug Thomas up is because it said that he might be involved in a cover-up surrounding these murders. It said that him and Marty Smart were friends and he might have been doing Marty a favor by purposely not doing the proper investigation towards these murders. Now, Doug Thomas adamantly denies this and says, no, we were not friends. I actually had him and his wife, Marilyn Sharp, come in one day and I gave them a counseling session. I'm not sure who's going to the sheriff for counseling sessions, but that's just suspicious to me. So another thing that's actually super important is that, yes, Marilyn and her husband Marty were having marital problems. And guess who was trying to help Marilyn get out of that abusive relationship? Sue Sharp. Sue Sharp had actually had a quite similar experience with her husband, Jim. Remember, she was in an abusive relationship and she didn't want Marilyn to go through that. So it said that, you know, she was kind of coaching her how to get out of this terrible relationship. And it said that Marty Smart went absolutely crazy when he got wind of this. So years go by, nothing happens, nothing's done about these murders, there's no moving forward, nothing, it's just stagnant. In 2013, a new sheriff actually reopened the case and Mike Gamberg was put on the case and he found a lot of oopsies. So first of all, he found a note from Marty Smart to his wife Marilyn, and I want to read you guys this note. That was in evidence and nothing ever happened. So the note reads, I've paid the price for your love, and now that I've bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we are through? Great. What else do you want? So I mean, that's some pretty serious evidence. So now let's keep in mind the evidence behind Marty Smart. So first of all, we have Marilyn saying that she found Tina's bloodied jacket in her basement, which cops just don't have a record of. Just don't have a record of it. Also, it said that Marty was missing his hammer, and you know how there was a hammer used at the crime scene, well, and then one found near a pond. Kind of weird. Also, now we find this letter. He ditches town and also tells a therapist that he did in fact kill these people, and yet he was never arrested. And now it's almost like it's too late because both Marty and Bobo Betty have passed away. So as for Sheila Sharp, the one who found her family brutally murdered, she does truly believe that it was Marty Smart and Bobo Betty, but some interesting new finds have actually come to light. As of April 2018, there was some DNA found, and it matched one of police's current suspects who's actually still living. There's actually 6 people that the police are suspicious of who are currently alive. So I mean, that's as of what, 2 years ago? This case really still could have the potential to be solved, and it appears that it's making a lot more progress than it had in the previous 30 years. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think did it? Do you think it's one of the 6 living suspects? I know a whole lot's not known about the 6 suspects, and I'm thinking it's probably because the police want to keep it on the low key, just that way it doesn't muddy up the waters for their investigation. But do you think this has the potential of being solved, or do you think Bobo Betty and Marty Smart were the culprits and justice will never truly be served because they had passed away before the crime was solved? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm having a good time making these videos. I hope to keep putting them out and stay motivated. I hope you guys are having a great day or night whenever you're watching this. I hope you're being safe out there, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.